Okay, so once again, evening recording session. The screen is in the background. I can see it. It's just a little odd, but there we go. PPM number 25, I believe, is where we are. Let me just double check that. Yes, indeed. Originally written March the 8th, 2004. Today is March the 9th. The leap year was 2004. I just said 20,004. Yep, no, 2004. And so we are on the right meditation, which is number 25. But our date is we are one day ahead. So as I mentioned yesterday, this whole set of meditations that are just going to go on for a while became chapter 2 in Being and Learning on Socrates. So we're going to sort of follow my exploration of the question concerning the relationship between being and learning through Socrates. So let's pick it up. Arendt tells us that Socrates' famous mission, which he describes most passionately in Plato's Apology, was one of trying to make friends out of the Athenian citizenry. Socrates, she says, carries out his mission practicing philosophy and exhorting and arousing others to do the same, under the belief that his purpose as a thinker was to help establish a, quote, common world built on the understanding of friendship, in which no rulership is needed, unquote. This is an insightful way of understanding Socrates, specifically when we place this depiction alongside Heidegger's Socrates. If Heidegger offers us a way of understanding the ontological location of Socrates' mission, or the location where he drew others when he questioned them and, as Meno described, put them under his spell, the spell of perplexity, then Arendt points us toward a way of understanding the implication of Socrates' magic speech. This speech, if we follow Arendt, was offered in the belief that he could turn others away from themselves and toward others. There are several competing versions of Socrates' mission that emerge from Plato's dialogues. That is, if we are interested in identifying the source that inspired him, the messenger that put him on his way, on his wandering in search of friends. In the Apology, Socrates recounts the most popular version of the story, which identifies the oracle at the temple of Delphi, the temple in honor of Apollo, as the messenger who delivered the tidings from the gods that put him underway. The message, Socrates, you are wisest, perplexed Socrates and drew him into the clearing of questioning. The message turned him around so that he became a question for himself. I know that I know nothing at all, so how could it be that I am deemed wisest by the gods? And the message turned him towards others, poets, politicians, artisans, and all who were willing to lend an ear to Socrates' questioning. Questioning which, as Euthyphro understood, went around and around, but seemed to lead nowhere. For Arendt, quote, it is obvious that this kind of dialogue, which doesn't need a conclusion in order to be meaningful, is most appropriate for and most frequently shared by friends. Friendship, to a large extent, indeed, consists of this kind of talking about something that friends have in common. By talking about what is between them, it becomes ever more common to them, unquote. If we follow Arendt, then, we understand why the dismantling of the self-certain subject that follows when we are held out to the nothing implies the possibility of inner subjectivity, or the possibility of being together in the world. Being together in and with the world. This being in and with means that we are always already participating in an organic process, that our being caught and thrown by being is but our awareness or attunement to the congregation that we are part of. As Arendt says elsewhere, quote, we are of the world and not merely in it, unquote. The relationship between being and beings forms a community, but a community where all are, quote, equal partners in a common world, that they constitute a community. Community is what friendship achieves, unquote. It's from Arendt. Socrates is wisest in part because he recognizes that friendship and community are already and not yet. He understood that He understood and was thereby perplexed by this fact that we are fundamentally relational beings, interconnected by being, yet likewise different in our being. For Socrates, this differentiation, in other words, our unique ways of appearing in the world and our distinct ways of seeing the world, was a source of wonder and perplexity. This community formed through difference was what gave rise to the most fundamental questions: how does it appear? From where do you stand? This question is a philosophical version of the common and everyday question, how are you? How's it going? To ask these questions is an authentic way, is both to wonder about the plurality that appears with all who appear and to establish a bond or connection. Wondering about the plurality is to acknowledge and recognize the differentiation that maintains the horizon of beings as a horizon of beings rather than a horizon of being. But wondering aloud about the source of the questioning is also an attempt to identify this horizon, as a boundary that draws together earth and sky, tide and wind, being and being, being and beings. To wonder is to seek to make meaningful this realization. To wonder is to seek to make meaningful this realization that we are already situated in this relationship with being and beings. To make meaningful is to realize what is real. This attempt follows from the awareness that the horizon is already not yet, does not of itself guarantee that we will respond to one another with openness, that we will non-willing, and thereby cultivate this relationship. Again, we can endure cheerfully, but we might also become forlorn and full of despair. Our bearing can be one of letting go and going with, but it can also be one of bearing down and withholding. We can offer ourselves as a gift to the other and remain steadfast in our openness to receive their saying, but we might also remain withdrawn and closed within ourselves, detached from the other. This is the dilemma Socrates faced as he sought to build a community through the cultivation of friendship. Well, so that was it. Oops. Did I just skip ahead? I believe I did. How funny. I did. I just read the meditation from 3:9. So that's kind of funny. Okay, it looks like we're going to get caught up by mistake. So let me go back up. And so we're going to catch up. So by mistake, I've just read the meditation from March the 9th, and now I need to read the meditation from March the 8th, which is interesting because this meditation, this printout of this meditation that I wrote, that I was supposed to read today, has a curious sort of break in it, or these, it's not a full page, there's 3 lines, so there's something funky about March 8th. Let's see what I wrote on March 8th. So I'm catching up. I'm reading 2 meditations today by accident. There you go. Okay. So we just ended with Socrates cultivating friendship and the challenge of cultivating friendship. And so the Arendtian take on Socrates made its way. So let's back up. So this is what I wrote on the 8th, which was PPM, well, this is PPM25. The original meditation, number 25, was written on the 8th. So I've read the one that I wrote on the 9th, and I'm now going to read the one I wrote on the 8th. So this PPM25 is going to include both of those two. By mistake, so be it. So we'll go back to the one written 3/8/2004. The give and take that marks learning and teaching is a process of giving and receiving teachability. The capacity to be open to the other, to receive the other, as beyond what we have named them. To wander within the horizon of being and encounter being's presencing is to be held out to the nothing as what is beyond naming. The Beyond is nameless, but appears to us in the namelessness of beings who appear to us without name. When we offer our teachability, we receive the other without name. When we are reposed in the letting be of beings, we are located in the region of listening. Our comportment is one of a listener. We hear the call of the other and attend to the gift they offer. If we have received this gift, we have properly opened up to the other and listened to their voice. In their appeal to us, they offer us a name, their name. We learn this name in listening. Such listening is made possible when our own voice, specifically the juridical voice, has been muted. The muting of the juridical voice enables us to lend an ear. In the reception of the other's gift, their name, we lend our hearing. I'm going to read that again. In the reception of the other's gift, their name, we lend our hearing. The exchange of name and hearing marks the give and take process of learning, teaching. Is our offering then a lending? We said above that in giving we have made an offer without concession. We said, and now I'm quoting from an earlier meditation, to give is to present without expecting anything in return. This is the gift of Gelassenheit, as the willing of non-willing. The gift gives without desiring compensation, without desiring to be sated. To sate is to satisfy, but denotes an overstuffing, an attempt to be fulfilled beyond capacity, as in glut. In giving, we bestow, we offer, we relinquish. Our attention and interest is fully engaged with the other. In the giving, we have emptied ourselves. This giving is the fulfillment of the dismantled ego, the destruction of the willing judging subject, the one I who stands against the other, which is seen as the object to be taken up. If the giving of the gift is accomplished, the reception produces non-willing. The reception is complete in itself, unquote. In giving the gift of teachability, our listening is an act of freedom, where we have made an offer without seeking reward or to be returned in kind. To be free, then, is to be released from the desire to be compensated, from the need to be acknowledged as valuable through a formula that measures and weighs our worth, the worth of our gift. We seek not rewards with the offering the gift. Our wandering is a seeking, is not a quest for the Holy Grail or a lost treasure at the end of the rainbow. Our wandering is the lost treasure. We plunder each moment we find ourselves attuned to being. Thus, when we say we lend an ear or two, we mean both that we are offering our capacity to listen to the other for the moment and thereby grant, quote, the use of something without the understanding that its equivalent will be returned, and, unquote, and in the sense that we contribute obligingly or helpfully. This is the crucially important dialogic character of the give and take. Teaching learning is a mutual exchange that is dialogic, the giving and receiving of evocative speech. We lend ourselves to the other in lending an ear, and in this sense we are adapting ourselves to the other. In being reposed, we are lending ourselves to listening. Learning is a lending, which is possible because we are in excess, wandering in the horizon of being, attuned to presencing, and we are full of Lent. To listen is to be full of wonder. In learning, we are said to be wonder-lent, full of wonder. In learning, we are said to be wonderlent, full of wonder. This is the outcome of the fulfillment of the emptying subject. In lending ourselves, we are flowing over into the others. We are giving ourselves to the other. Our intense, attentive listening is the sign of our wonderlent, of our being full of wonder. The give and take of teaching learning is akin to the overflowing of the grail, which is passed along, shared, and in passing on forms a community or congregation of friends. Teaching learning is the process by which the community emerges, the community of friends, the community amongst all living beings in the horizon, the excess of being's presence and the overflowing of this cup. Teaching and learning is the passing on, the exchange of this cup. And that was the end of that. So you can see where I wrote that, and then I immediately picked up the next day, and I wasn't setting it up. It's just when I went and sort of looked at it, I thought, well, now's the time. I don't actually have notes, so I'm just speculating this is what happened. I went right to a rent. I know that there wasn't an outline. I certainly wasn't following an outline. I mean, I may have had some idea, okay, well, this seems to be anticipating something that Arendt said. So the next days, which I read earlier, so sort of I read the meditation that came before this one, after this one. I read the one that came before I read this one. Figure that one out. And the first meditation I read that came after the one that I just read, picks up with Arendt's idea that Socrates' whole mission was about making friendship. And it's interesting because I wanted to make a commentary on that. I was anticipating what I was going to say in response to that, and then I realized that I'd read the wrong one. So before I could start making commentary, I read the right one. But now I'm coming back to the first thing I wanted to say, or it caught my attention, was that over the years, the 10 years now, and I've written and presented a lot of times on Hannah Arendt. I don't think a year has gone by that I haven't taught her in a class, or talked about her at a conference, or written about her in some form or another. And this year I've been doing a lot of work on her. I go through these cycles, and this is one of them where I'm really been reading her a lot. Arendt wrote a lot from her experience. I don't think there's a philosopher, and now with the expanded idea of philosophers as musicians, artists, etc., it's the case that the source of the work comes out of our experience, So that's the beauty of art, I believe, in philosophy, but maybe art in the sense of painting and music, is that it's one of the most honest ways that we can be in the world, because an artist is presenting how they see things. It's not just who they are, but how they see things. So Arendt wrote, when she was describing Socrates as engaged in a process that was emerging, the kind of dialogue was something that emerged naturally amongst friends. That is because they held things in common, and the world became more in common as they talked. That was Hannah Arendt's experience. She was a deeply loyal friend, and for her, life was about conversation. Life was about talking, and I believe that she taught in that way too. So this notion that out of dialogue comes not just friendship but community is really important. And so in this particular meditation that I just read, that was from the day before the one on Socrates and Arendt's take on Socrates, I'm really emphasizing here this idea of the lending or the gifting of the self through listening, and it's the first time I talk about the self being in excess. So now the emptying of the self, which is to say a way of describing one becoming open and listening. This emptying is now like a pouring out of a cup, but it's not a pouring out in such a way that it's a waste. It's pouring into the other's cup, if you will. So it's like you're giving yourself to the other and emptying yourself. Now, all that to say, and it probably wouldn't take someone a lot of guessing to see that when I make the move from lending to Lent, I'm playing with the season, the spiritual season of Lent. And I didn't go back and check this, but I wouldn't be surprised if that year, 2004, Lent was happening in early March in the way that it is here, this year. So Ash Wednesday, Mardi Gras was Tuesday, so Fat Tuesday was last Tuesday, the 4th. Ash Wednesday, Lent began on the 5th. And so we are 1, 2, 3, this is the 4th day of Lent. And I imagine that if I went back and checked it, in 2004, it was also at this time in March that Lent was underway. So I was inspired for sure by that. And that's my sort of Catholic philosophical background coming into the scene here. So when I talk about lending and Lent and say that we are full of wonder and full of Lent. I'm playing with this idea of Wonderland. Now, I'm trying to see how I came to be able to make this claim about Lent and being full of Lent. And I don't know if that was, I said we lend ourselves to the other in lending an ear. In being reposed, we are lending ourselves to listening. Learning is thus a lending, which is possible because we are in excess, wandering in the horizon, attuned to the present. We are full of Lent. So that is for sure a stretch, poetic stretch, to say we are full of, in the sense of being in excess, and then saying we are full of Lent. To listen is to be full of wonder. We are said to be Wonderland. I'm laughing because that's definitely, I'm sure when I wrote it I thought I was very clever and I thought it was very interesting to write that, but it's a bit of a stretch. I mean, it's a good play on lending and Lent, but it could have been a better play. Anyway, so that's why then I say that, you know, the community is formed in the overflowing cup of the Grail. So I may have edited that for the in the final Being and Learning publication. I believe that I wrote in the overflowing of the presencing and being. I think I took Grail out of there. But I did say the excess of being's presence is the overflowing of this cup. So now I'm playing with the Last Supper, or, you know, the Eucharistic celebration, and the community being, and the overflowing cup, which now is going to be a play on the flooding of the tide that moves us. It's all going to start, you know, all these sort of Catholic Christian motifs are going to come into play now in relationship and alongside the Taoist ones that I've already made, as well as the Buddhist ones. So my background in interreligious dialogue, which, you know, I was introduced to at Fordham by you or cousins, that's also there. You know, I've sort of, at this kind of work is in this threshold place between first philosophy, metaphysics, ontology, and a kind of theology, you know, and interreligious dialogue. So it's in that space that a lot of this work happens. So I'm open to, you know, revealed religion and religious tradition as a source for these terms that I've called first terms, that are the things that I'm working with. Now, all that to say that this was truly a strange, not strange, it is an unusual meditation insofar as I jumped into March 9th, which is today. So I jumped over the meditation from March 8th, and it's strange because it's the first one where the printout, there are these extra 3 lines that I wrote out there, and I don't know why, but then I ended up printing them, and I think now I'm recalling what I did here. When I was at that point, almost 1 month into it, I think I was trying to make sure that I stayed focused, that I didn't go too far out, but that I wasn't repetitive either. So I was trying to find a sort of middle ground between too quickly moving out on the meditations, you know, so that I was just sort of running ahead, and at the same time I was sort of getting exhausted a little bit with what I was calling compression, which is repetition. So these lines that are included here that I printed out were little prompts for myself for the next day. And so what I wrote were questions. What is the name? What name do we receive from the other when we listen to her voice and not our own? How is teaching, learning, the lending of teachability, the passing of the cup, conjoined with the namelessness of the beyond? And then I wrote, repose as opposed to deposing then, making friends out of the Athenians. So anticipating where I was going to go. And then I wrote friendship, one word, then below that, the gift, teachability, learning, destiny, the Tao, the nameless, the nothing, as our destiny which throws us back upon our standing in relation to beings. So, it's a little cryptic, but interesting. And then I started the next day with Arendt tells us. Socrates' famous mission was one of trying to make friends of the Athenian citizen. So, there you are, 2 in 1 on this day. An interesting one, March 9th, 2014, where I've sort of caught up now and leapt ahead. So leap year is now officially over, and I've caught up. And that's going to do it for today.